Dopo la crisi, continueremo con questo sistema economico di ingiustizia sociale e di disprezzo per la cura dell'ambiente, del creato, della casa comune.
Welcome everyone to this webinar organized by Life and Lifestyle Village in collaboration with the young people of other village. Andrea Roncella from Finance and Humanity, Alberto Gastaldo from Energy and Poverty, Vanessa Asson from Work and Care, and Luisa Rodriguez from Life and Lifestyle. Before starting some practical information, this webinar is in English, but you can also follow it in other languages in the dedicated link under the YouTube bar. And for the Italian language translation, you must select German language. And you can also send us your questions. Well, I bring also greetings from Professor Luigino Bruni, the Scientific Director of the Economy Francesco, who today couldn't be with us because we are in Florence engaged for the National Festival of Civil Economy. Well, the topic of today is ecological conversion, and to deepen this theme, we invite a special guest, Father Augusto Zampini. Who is Father Augusto? When Pope Francis created a dicastery for promoting integral human development in 2016, Father Augusto is invited to be the coordinator of development and faith, an area dealing with economics and finance, labor and social movement, indigenous people and peace, and new technologies. In 2018, Pope Francis appointed him as one of the experts to the Synod of the Amazon in 2019, and this year in April he is appointed adjunct secretary of the same dicastery. Thanks to Father Augusto to being with us today. Well, Father Augusto, a few days ago, Pope Francis wrote to bankers and managers in Cernobbio for the Forum Ambrosetti, quoting his apostolic exhortation Evangelii Gaudium to indicate the path that will lead us of the health, economic and social emergency caused by the pandemic of COVID-19. Still gripping the whole of humanity, he said. And he also thinks that from the experience of the pandemic, we are all learning that no one themselves. We have touched with our own hands the fragility that marks us and unites us. We have understood better that every personal choice falls on the life of our neighbor, of those who are close to us, but also of those who physically are on the other side of the world. We therefore need a change in the economy, which can become an expression of care, which does not sacrifice the dignity of man to the idols of finance, and does not use money to dominate, but to serve. On the same occasion, Pope Francis said that it is essential to train and support the new generation of economists, entrepreneurs, and change makers. And he also recalls the invitation he made to us on May 2019, when he invited us to Assisi for Economy of Francesco in the city of the young St. Francis, who stripped of everything to choose God as the polar star of his life, and he became poor with the poor and the universal brother. Therefore, it is important for Pope Francis to invest in the new generation that are the protagonists of tomorrow's economy, to form people who are willing to put themselves at the service of the community. And in this month, we have worked on this beautiful process of the Economy of Francesco, involving young people from all over the world, and trying to reduce the physical distances we live through activities and online meetings like this, hoping to meet soon. So my first question for you, Father Augusto, is what do you think of the current process of the Economy of Francesco, and how do you see it in the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, and thank you for the invitation. And what a fantastic video on the introduction. I'm very jealous. We'll think the Vatican COVID Commission about something like that. Well, so many things to say. I think I will synthesize the answer going back to Evangelii Gaudium. The Pope doesn't want an economy that kills. I want to say, but what does it mean? Is economy killing? Well, an economy that is generating inequality and increasing inequality also. And for those who were, I mean, there are massive research, as you economists and you study that. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of papers and books and studies on this problem of inequality that generates a lot of, I mean, unfortunate ways of living and premature deaths and poverty and hunger. And but for those who were even a bit skeptic about the research, then COVID comes, and it happens that it has exacerbated inequality. Inequality, not just income inequality, but inequality in access to healthcare, inequality to access to education. Those children who don't have any access to the web, I mean, they were in trouble during the lockdown. Inequality to access to food, inequalities to access to even basic needs, because there's no deliveries that we had in the big cities, and the supply chain was disrupted. Inequalities on income and inequalities on capital. I mean, all those who could, there are people who could live, well, regardless of an economic breakdown, but there were all millions and millions of people who are living on a daily basis, let alone the informal workers, that in the south there is half of the economic force, that for them this was absolutely terrible. So for those who are a bit adamant to accept the problem of inequality that really hurts and kills, well, the COVID has shown that we don't need to spend any more energy discussing, but we need to spend all our energy tackling inequality. So the Pope wants an economy that can serve for the well-being of people, that can serve to create communities, and not that kills, generating inequality and generating more individualism. But not only that, we know that as an economic system of extraction, production, pollution, and overconsumption and waste, not just kills people, but no, think about all the people affected by air pollution or polluted water. But it kills also our species and destroys biodiversity, and also it kills the natural environment that in the long run creates our planet unbearable for human life. And because this is a webinar on lifestyle, so there's no lifestyle without a home, and it's impossible to discuss how do we live better if we are going to destroy the home where we live, our common home in the planet. So this economy that is killing the social structures, I would say, that is killing people because of, and is killing the planet, well, it's an economy that needs to be changed, and dramatically, not just to tweak it here and there. I mean, it needs radical change. So how? Well, that's very difficult because we don't know how. So there are two ways of changing radically something. Either a revolution that probably won't be beneficial for the poor, or an intelligent cultural, spiritual, intellectual change through a massive movement of people like you're trying to create in the Economy of Francesco, that can change individuals and structures at the same time. So in that sense, you are fulfilling the mission, not just of the latest documents of Pope Francis, of Laudato Si, but even the first main important document that he wrote to the church, that was Evangelii Gaudium, the Joy of the Gospel, where he says, I don't want an economy that kills. I want an economy that serves. And then talking even further about finance, he said, I don't want a finance that rules the real economy. I want finance that can provide also a service, a good service for the real economy. Not and we can even go further that and say, well, in Laudato Si, I don't want a technology that rules with the financial power, creating a technocratic society. No? I want all these to be at the service, especially of the least, of the last, of the weakest, of the poor, of the marginalized. So, but to do that, to change this, we require a lot of brains, and in that sense, you have a lot of intelligent people, a lot of energy. And that's why the Pope said, no, I just want the young people, the experts. They come and just talk a little bit about that, but I want the young people because they are the future and they have that energy to change. And also, I want a really diverse network, a really, really global one. I don't want an European-centered or Anglo-Saxon or even Italian-centered, no? And that was the discussion at the beginning, the early stage of the Economy of Francesco, where some of us saying, but hold on a minute, this is not an Italian thing, please. And now you see all this, in a way, the virus, which is a disgrace, is a crisis, terrible, but in a way it has helped a little bit, or has created an opportunity for the Economy of Francesco to do what the Economy of Francesco was aimed at the beginning. You started to work together already as a network of people worldwide from different angles, agricultural, industrial, financial, academic, you name it. But you started to create this network, very, very diverse, very, very global, with this energy and these brains, and also rooted in good spirituality, that can be a source of actual, sustainable, and deep change. So in that sense, I don't have anything more to say, but to congratulate you and to encourage you to continue. So you're doing a great job, not just for the Pope, but for the world. And I really, really hope that you can further this way of working, and what you have initiated. No? And I really hope that you can even change not just your own habits and your own industries and your own or the things that you can change, but also that you can help others to change, that you can be a kind of catalyst to spill over that radical change that is needed to create an economy that serves.
Okay. Thank you very much, Father Augusto. And I don't know, Julia, if you wanted to say something, or no, she disappeared. So it's my turn. So my name is Andrea Roncella, and as Julia was telling before, I am the junior coordinator of the Finance and Humanity Village, which is, of course, one of the villages that, of the Economy of Francesco, and the one that is tackling the very important issue of finance that, as Father Augusto was saying, is really central. And so today I've been invited, and I thank the organizers of this webinar to moderate a little bit this panel. And I will take this opportunity also as an advantage to make, well, a first comment and a question to Father Augusto. Moving from the topic of today's webinar, that is ecological conversion, I think that, well, it's easy to see that outside of the economy of Francesco in the world, in the last few years, there has been a lot of talk about the ecological transition, okay? We have seen the Fridays for Future and Greta movement that concerns in particular the climate change. We have been witnessing the several Green New Deals that have been proposed by different public institutions. Even within the business and financial sectors, there has been a greater attention, I would say, on these topics. And I'm thinking about, for example, the support that the business sector is trying to provide for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the various statements that we have heard about, signed by the most important corporations in the world. So there is a lot of talk about this ecological transition. My guess, however, is that when we as ordinary citizens think about this ecological transition, we have in mind, first of all, a transformation of the structures, a transformation of the institutions. And in this way, I guess that we run the risk to forget that the first transformation, or better say, the first conversion, should concern ourselves. And that means our hearts, and therefore our ways of life. So maybe, and I'm very curious to listen your opinion, Father Augusto, about that, an ecological conversion rather than a simple ecological transition could be what can really characterize the proposal of the economy of Francesco. But at the same time, this would open more questions, more topics, more issues, because what do we mean for ecology? I mean, what is the meaning of ecology according to the economy of Francesco world? And again, what would involve this conversion, this process of conversion? Which are the steps you see are necessary in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Can I share the screen, or is it too complicated?
No, you can share the screen.
Okay, so I will just to share a screen. I have some slides that could help, and if it. So what Andrea said, it makes sense because I will tell you some. I mean, I will tell you something. A story. What for us, for the church, when we mention ecology, we said integral ecology. Before Pope Francis, before Laudato Si, this terminology was contested, because ecology means the web of life, no? Oikologos, the life of the oikos, the life of the home. But so we don't need, what does it mean integral? Of course it's integral. We don't need to add an adjective to ecology. So the people were not very happy about that. It was a term that was coined at Oxford University. But then when Pope Francis explained this, he said, no, there are lots of people working on issues on poverty, social justice or injustices, improvement of businesses, improvement of lifestyles, etc. But actually, they don't care about the planet, and on the other hand, there were lots of ecological movements or scientists very completely committed to the problem of the ecological destruction, but actually they were ignoring a little bit of social issues, or a little bit of totally sometimes. They were forgetting that we human beings are part of the ecosystems, and that not only we are part of that, we are a very important part, because actually so much so that we can destroy the ecosystem. So when we call about the protection, the conservation of the ecology, we need to include the protection, the conservation of not just individuals but of society. So when the Pope says, now what happens is that the poor and societies are crying out, and then the earth, the ecosystems are crying out, and the actual root of these two cries is the same. So if you want to tackle one and you want to work on social issues, poverty, good business, etc., you cannot ignore the ecology, the way, because the web of life is, thanks to that, we are able to live and to discuss all these things. But on the other hand, you cannot try to preserve this beautiful planet that is God's creation by ignoring one of the main species, and if you believe in God, by ignoring those who were entrusted by God to look after the planet. So when Pope Francis looked at it and said, no, this is inter-ecology, they go hand in hand. Cry of the earth, the cry of the poor, social issues, environmental issues. So this is actual ecology, what we call inter-ecology. What I'm saying this long introduction, Andrea, is because to answer your question, we need to clarify that. So inter-ecology requires an integral conversion, because otherwise it's not possible to. But I would like to share, so for example, a power, linking with my introduction. If we say, well, conversion means change really, I mean, actual change. So if we don't want to continue with business as usual, as we shouldn't, especially now, because we want to go back to normal, and normal was unjust, unfair, and unsustainable because of our way of doing business. So we don't want to go back to this normality of doing business or business as usual. We want to, but we don't want to go back either to our lifestyles as usual. So we have to change the business, but also our own lives. There's something similar what I was saying of social issues and environmental issues. So we cannot talk about changing all this and caring for our common home or caring for the poor if we don't change the business or laws and regulations, society, but also ourselves. On the other hand, we cannot just think that by changing all of my own habits, my family habits, we are going to change the world. So the two comes hand in hand, and this is very, very important to understand the conversion that we are aiming at. So radical change towards a common good and the care for our common home requires the change of people and households, of companies in the private sector, but also the public sector, nations and governments. And you need a driver. And the driver is not just here. The driver is also spiritual, and therefore religious communities, our indigenous communities, spiritual communities are very, very important. But the question is for me, and the question I've been listening to when we discuss, and I'm trying to answer from the Castro is, well, what is it that actually we have to change? What is the core of the change? Because when I said, if I go back to this one, I'm sure most of you would agree, yeah, no to business as usual, okay, yes, but what does it mean? What is it that we are aiming at? Because this is the most difficult thing. And one thing is the extractivist mentality that is underpinning this economic model that also creates a culture of dominion. And look at this picture. This is from the Amazon basin. Huh? This reveals, even the image reveals what I'm talking about. We extract, we dominate, we destroy, and we threat our lifestyles, even the long-term business, and our planet. So this is what we need to change. And we need to change it for what? Well, for a different culture. A different culture, not of culture of domination, neither a throwaway culture, because we extract, we consume, and we throw away. And by the way, we are indifferent to the problem that we are listening, but towards a culture of of care, no? So not a culture of domination, extraction, domination, and damage, but a culture of care. We need to change from a culture of indifference to what we are doing and the hurt we're causing to people and planet, to a culture of encounter, the encounter with people and the encounter, the relationship with our species and the planet can help us, contemplation can help us to love it and to care. And also from the technocratic culture, that is the technology and business and finance and politics, the powerful people together, creating a kind of new elitist system that is extracting value and life from people and planet towards a life-giving. And it is possible in the economy. I mean, it is possible. In a nutshell, this is synthesized in one phrase from the Gospel, from the Old Testament, in the Bible, Genesis 2:15, that says, God entrusted human beings, the earth, he said, to till it and keep it. That means to work with it, but to care for it. It's not just care and don't touch it, but it's not just, work and don't care for it. So this is what cultivating this can create a culture of encounter and not of indifference, of care and not destruction and dominion and throwaway, and of life-giving and not elitist, and life for some and not for all. And this is what we call the ecological conversion. Ecological conversion, understood as integral ecology, to sum up and to wrap up my answer, is integral ecology is environmental and social issues together. This is what we have to transform to create a different culture that underpins a different economic systems. And but it's deep down. It goes deep down. And this is a quotation from John Paul II that the Pope brings into Laudato Si. Every effort to protect and improve our world entails profound changes in lifestyles. This is what I like of this village. But not just in lifestyles. It's in models of production and consumption, what I was talking about before. And not just on models of production, on established cultures of power which today govern societies. In a nutshell, this resumes or synthesizes what I have just said, not this changing of cultures. It's not just my own lifestyle or my lifestyle, my family, my community, yes. But it's not just the models of production and consumption, yes, but it's also the structures of power. Because if we don't change these three dimensions, there's no possibility that we can change deeply, radically. Radically means from the roots. No? In Spanish or in Italian, it's more easy to understand. No, the radicale, no, it comes from the radice, and in the same in Spanish. So it's a radical change. It goes deep down below, not just here. And I will present it even more deeper, so to open up the discussion. In lifestyle, we have a toxic lifestyle. If this way of extracting, producing, consuming, and throwing away, how can we counter it? This process of conversion, this process of radical change, with a simple way of living, with a more ascetic. That less is more. What does it mean? Less is more, personally, but also in the economy, and in laws and in the structures of power. What does it mean? Less is more. This is a very important question. I would love for this village of economy, Francesco, to develop a little bit more. No, because if we keep, and I followed attentively what the webinar of Kate Raworth, no, that she was explaining. If we keep having more and more, producing more, and we think that this is good, that this is better, that this is success, well, no, this is toxic, and we are destroying it. But the only way of countering is also by understanding a less is more. How do we create simpler ways of living and measure that as a success? The notion of time, production, the way we produce and the way we live, it's very, very industrial, no? And we have forgotten that time is also a gift. It's not something to be utilized for something that we need to produce. So that we need more time to contemplate and to relate with others and with nature. And also the false productivity that we produce, we understand of production, of mass production, or producing just materially, as opposed to integral development. We don't grow up, we don't develop just materially. We are integral beings with spirits, with relations, with minds, with culture, with art, etc. And also with the planet, with the biodiversity. This is part of the process of conversion. And here you have, when I mention, why is the church talking about that? Well, for many reasons. First of all, because we care about what's going on. But secondly, because we think we can also contribute in this process of conversions through our spirituality. And you can see throughout this, to counter this utilitarian development model, that we can bring the iconic dimension of spirituality, the contemplation, the beauty. If we don't contemplate, if we don't realize the beauty that we have in front of us, the beauty of a person, the beauty of a society, of a community, the beauty of nature, it's very rare that we will care for it. No? Then the individualistic development is just, for me, individualistic could be personal or collective, liturgical. The liturgy takes you to a different understanding of, it's a collective dimension. I cannot celebrate a liturgy of my own. Well, I can as a priest, but it's not the same, no? If I celebrate it with people. Well, so the liturgy is by essence a collective activity, and can help us to move from individualistic understanding of living, this lifestyle and living and lifestyle, to a communitarian one, a communal one. And this has nothing to do with communism of the USSR, not former USSR, but we are social beings, we are political beings, and therefore we can only develop socially and politically. So, and we have to understand that if we don't develop in relation, we are in trouble. And that the liturgical understanding of spirituality, the liturgical or celebration dimension, can help us to move away from individualism, and also from the notion of time, of time just as a mere production, because the liturgy is not just time to produce something. It's just time to spend, to share together, to remember something, to bring something, a memorial, to bring it to the present and to hope for a new future. And finally, the materialistic development, this thing about Kate Raworth that's saying, well, and leave it simply, well, there is a very ancient dimension of spirituality, the ascetic, and it's not just Christian. No? We share it with most of religions, I would say. Why, if 80% of the population in the world claims to be spiritual, and most spiritualists in the world have this less is more, this ascetic understanding of living, what is happening that we cannot translate this into economics? No, this is a very good question that could answer. So, in a nutshell, I mean, we can say another phrase of Laudato Si that says all this long thing in one sentence. An awareness of the gravity of today's cultural and ecological crisis might be translated into new habits. But new habits, remember that new habits is not just mine, no? It's not just mind habits, our social habits, so cultivated some virtues, also social virtues, that are not just virtues of the way we live as human beings, but also the way we live as human beings with the environment. Now, if we can translate this into the model of the way we extract from the earth, so not just extracting value, but providing value, the way that we relate to others, not extracting and destroying and utilize or considering the others as resources, but also considering others as values and as gifts, and the way also we consume and we live. If we can transform this into economic models, political laws and regulations, that will, I would say, we provide a good basis for the radical change. If I change personally, it's very, very important. Every single little gesture counts, but we need something collective, and not just collective. We need something global from the global village, and for that we need these new sound virtues that can inspire economic models and policies.
Thank you very much, Father Augusto. Very powerful, as usual, I would say. And well, there are many questions I would like to, well, or many points I would like to debate with you. Before doing that, I would open the floor to our main three discussants or panelists, I would say. So the first one is Vanessa Asson, who is an academic. Well, I like to see her both as an academic and an activist, because of course she's a researcher at the Catholic University of Pernambuco, and she's a lawyer and consultant of many NGOs. And she has been particularly active in the study and in the development of the rights of nature issue. So, Vanessa, I know you also collaborate with the United Nations. We wanted to hear from you your experience about that and your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Ciao a tutti. It is such a pleasure to take the floor with the young people of Francesco, and an honor to share this meeting with Father Augusto. Thank you. In the village work and care, we are working from the thought that Francesco economy needs to start from Laudato Si premises. Among these premises, the basis is the recognition of the fact that we are part of the same common home, that we are children of the same mother, the earth, that we form a greater citizenship, an ecological citizenship, which is not only human, but includes the entire planetary community. This condition presupposes the interconnection between all beings on the planet. So it presupposes the interdependence between all human and non-human nodes, living beings, and those apparently non-living, like a rock or earthy substrate. The care we are discussing starts from these basic premises, from the recognition of the interdependence between all beings that are carried in Mother Earth's lap. From the interdependence, care can be inspired in all relationships, not only those at work, but also those of service, which we naturally practice because we are part of this interconnected planetary community. In this way, any thought about a new possible economy, such as economy of Francesco, comes from the need to care for the other, considered regardless of its human or non-human nature. Taking care of others and anyone without prejudice guarantees care within the exchanges of human beings. For that, it is necessary to expand human rights and include them in the rights of nature that regulates the relations between all beings that inhabit the common house, the common home. The element of care for all the relationships in which they occur within society and especially at work is reflected in the change in linguistic expressions. For example, we cannot be considered mere human resources in the corporations to which we dedicate our work, just as the other members of nature cannot be considered as patrimony, appropriate thing, and are not mere natural resources. An economy that is aligned with the harmony in nature and inspired by the solutions offered by the nature behavior of ecosystems is able to rescue the basis of this relational coexistence among all beings on Earth from the respect of caring for others. We can no longer think of the development at any cost, even with the pretext of including a look at sustainability. The sustainability discourse exceeded its limit and culminated in the ecological crisis that the movement for sustainable development intended to avoid. The system is now collapsed. It is time to wake up to a new concept that is inspired by the prosperity and abundance of the earth itself, so that everyone can share in that prosperity and abundance of the Great Mother. The economy of Francesco is inspired by the Earth's own nature behavior, where abundance is a reality, where relationships are complementary and reciprocal because they are interdependent. This community, this economy is created on the basis of the community paradigm that takes place horizontally and is the one that will guarantee us the best practices through public policies that respect everyone and all in the earth without distinction. Ending this brief contribution, I want to quote a thought of São Francisco de Assis in Portuguese, based on the Brazilian writer Leonardo Boff. What kind of action is imposed on the man of postmodernity? It is the conscious action of respect, care, tenderness, cordiality, and conviviality towards all things. Leaving more space for heroes will generate another multidimensional balance, which guarantees a more human and integrated way of life with nature and others. Finally, I want to gently ask to Father Augusto, do you think that the recognition of rights of nature, considering we are nature, could contribute for change the economic system? And please, Father Augusto, send to Papa Francisco a big and huge hug, because he is my biggest inspiration in this service for Mother Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vanessa. There is something that we can help, whether it's with the recognition of rights or not, but it's the value, the intrinsic value of nature. Because the problem with the language of rights is it's very easy to put it, no? Sometimes, not necessarily, to put it like, okay, something that needs to be respected, but I would like to go even before the rights, that is to discover the value, the intrinsic value that it has. And this is again related to what I was calling the utilitarian mentality that is mainstream in economics. So if we don't, why I'm saying this? Because otherwise, economically speaking, it will be, could help, but just the language of rights could be just something that is coming from outside. If that I have to respect or I must respect because I've been told that it's a right. Whereas if we discover the value, we can understand the right. And let me explain that. When I see a forest, when I see the sea, when I see species, just as a resource to be utilized, to be used for something, to produce for production and to produce something that I might need, even if it's a basic need. But if I just see it as a resource to be used in order to improve my lifestyle, then this is a problem of lifestyles, not just of rights. Why? Because I'm not recognizing that forest, that ocean, that species has a value in its own right, has a value in itself. And that means that if I use it, then that's what indigenous cultures do, and we used to do it even before. Well, we belong to the land. We are earthly people. No, we were created with the earth, one of the stories of creation. So when we use the earth, we have to give back. We cannot just create this utilitarian, extractive mentality or culture that generates a destructive economy system and a not healthy lifestyle. So recognizing the value, but even in human beings, that's why they discarded, the people who are left out. So I look at the language that we use in economic, natural resources, human resources. Well, I would like to ask you, to beg you, to start challenging that language. We are not just resources. I mean, we have a value. I mean, our resources is something I use, and well, okay, when it doesn't serve, I just leave it out. Well, that's not what human beings are. But also, that's not the ocean. Without the ocean, we cannot breathe. No, that this is the problem that we have. The heating of the ocean is creating a massive problem in the Earth system. Well, the forest is not just something there to cut and to use the wood and to use the leaves. Well, it has a particular, it plays a particular role in the entire planet, and every species also has a so we don't have the right. Let's put it like that. We don't have the right to destroy what God has given us. So, but if you discover the value of those things, in the value even in our relationships, the value for us, we came. My colleague Josh, Father Josh, who is in charge of the ecology here in the dicastery, he normally explains, no, this timeline of the Earth that is like this, this screen, and we came just there, and so all these millions of years have been the Earth, or we believe that God through nature have been prepared this habitat, this home with its uniqueness. There's no other planet that, as far as we know, that can host us. And we came in the very, very last minute, because before it was impossible. Now, because of the distance between the Earth and the sun and the moon and the greens and the oceans, we are able to live. And now we are destroying it because of a productive economic system that we have invented. It's not a natural one. So we don't have the right to destroy that. We don't have the right to transfer this world in a better way that we receive it to the next generations. We don't have the right to prevent future generations to listen to the voice of God through each creature, because God has something to say. No, we don't have the right even to destroy our own environment for the sake of more money. So what we have to do is to understand the value that it has for life. And I go back to the title of the village, life and lifestyle. No, life, it has some value, and our life is super valuable, each one of us, but social life as well. But also in my individual life and my social life is connected with the natural life. We cannot exist without natural life. And so there is a value in the way we live. And if we don't understand the value, my fear is that we won't understand the rights. So yes, for the rights, but my role as a priest is to push for the underpinning value of the rights. That is and you mentioned St. Francis of Assisi. Look at the language that St. Francis of Assisi was using. No, brother tree, brother wolf, no, sister bird, whatever. No? So even he was naming different creatures as siblings. Is it not wonderful? Because of course they're not humans. Of course we have a special thing, but just to feel and to call them as siblings, it leads you towards a different leads you towards valuing what they mean, and therefore having a different relationship. And I think if we manage to push that agenda forward, that will be very, very valuable, even for those who are pushing the agenda for the rights of nature. Because you see what's happening with the human rights, no? Well, it's a wonderful declaration. For the church, is one of the most important declarations in the history of humanity. But are human rights being respected now in the 21st century? So we need to push even to recover what's underpinning the rights while we work, not discarding anything. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much for this clarification.
Thank you very much, Father.
Yeah, I really like, what you mentioned at the end, that it's a good example to see what is going on with the human rights, and if actually we are we are achieving to respect the human rights. No, so it's very important to rediscover the values behind these rights and these words. So thank you very much, Father Augusto. And now it's the turn to move on. Alberto Gastaldo, who is an entrepreneur, and so he is the co-founder of this energy cooperative, which is named Energia Positiva, positive energy, I guess, in English, and that cares in particular to allow people become energy prosumers. That means both producers and consumers of clean energy. And in this way, to allow these people and us to participate in the country transition towards a more sustainable energy production mix. So maybe, Alberto, moving from your experience, if you want to tell us more about this initiative, this is a good moment, I guess.
Yes. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everybody, for the invitation. I really appreciate to be here this afternoon, also with Father Augusto. Yes, Energia Positiva is an energy cooperative that is quite different from the other that still exist in the energy sector. Our aim was from the beginning to let the people participate to the energy transition of their country. Just because we think that, and also with the intervention of the other relators, I think there is a problem that energy is a clear aspect, a strategic aspect for a country. And so every country want to be the executor and the decidator, I don't know how to say exactly in English, but decide about their energy strategy. And also if this strategy could not be so sustainable. So our aim is to empower people in order to try to stop these government parts or to allow these government parts and indicate to the government where the people want to go. Just because, as we said before, we need a real change here, a real change, just because if not, we're gonna change now, we will have a lot of problem in the future, not only for us, but only for the future generation. So we need to do something right now, just because there is no, as Father Augusto said before, there is no other planet that we can go to living. So we need solution. We need something that could empower people in this way. And Energia Positiva rise for this issue. It's clear. I want also to talk about the energy village, just because I think this is a great opportunity to talk about the work that we are doing in the village. The energy village, the energy production, the energy consumption is one of the most maybe affected things in the pollution, in the air pollution, in the and other stuff, and in the environment pollution. So it's really important that we can elaborate something or some models that could be a part of the solution, of the great solution, of the big solution that we need in this field. And I have an example that I would take here. That is the elemosiniere of the Pope. That I don't know how to say exactly in English. I think the alm giver, but I don't know if it's good. Just because. In 2018, the Pope and the alm giver of the Pope, for example, paid 3.5 million euros of energy bill that poor people could not pay for their own. So energy can create poverty, and the energy poverty is something that is still arising in our country, not only in in developing country, but also in developed country. So we have to rethink about our structure of our sector and think about different type of production and consumption of energy. And cooperation could be a good answer to this question, or a first answer to this question. But I would like to ask for the occasion a question to Father Augusto. It's how can we convince, or how can we lead government to take part of this process? Just because, as I said before, government think about energy, about something strategic for their developing future. So how can we let government know that energy policies, in order to be more sustainable and more renewables, could be like led by everybody? That's the point. That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alberto. There's no single answer to that, and depends on the government and depends on the situation. But you made a good point. The basis is everyone understands that energy is crucial for the country and for the communities. So you don't need to discuss that. The question is, well, where is the energy coming from, and what is the consequences of that energy production, and the cost and the risk. So I like to think that there is an energy that is coming from heaven. I mean, to use the analogy, so the sun is coming every day. Wind, well, we have it just every day, or in some regions, but some more than others, but the air is there. And so why don't we use the energies coming from heaven, especially with the new technological development that we have that is quite sophisticated? That is, as you say, positive, meaning that it doesn't have like we call damaging consequences to the environment and to people. It doesn't steal from the earth anything, because it's there already. So it's positive. It doesn't have any hurt or what we call collateral effects. Also another word that I hate, but anyway, or phrase. But and the cost is debatable, because the cost is now becoming even cheaper than ordinary energies based on fossil fuels. But also depending on how you calculate the cost. Because if you calculate precisely the damage that it caused by using other energies, well, then the cost is reduced. And also if you calculate the subsidies. To remember, the fossil fuel industry is one of the most subsidized industries in the world. So if you reduce the subsidies and include between the cost, the damages that you are creating with these sorts of energy, then is clearly the other is cheaper, even from a basic utilitarian perspective. No? This is one aspect that could argue for those who are a bit indifferent to the value, to what Vanessa was saying, no? To the value and to nature and to the life and to the rights of life. But also you can go further, and you can go even at the nature of the policy. One of the, when I mentioned time in my earlier presentation, I have to say that most people, when I talk about time, they don't, I mean, it's not very well received. No? So normally the feedback, nobody talks about that. But time is, look at how we conceive time. When we took, the problem with politicians, but also with CEOs of companies, is the short term. And I'm not blaming them, I'm not saying that, but if they have to report back to the society or to the shareholders what they have done in 4 years, well, they will see their activities in those 4 years. It requires a lot of, a lot of spirituality, I would say, of self-giving life or going beyond your own self to say, well, this is what I contribute to this long-term process of growth for the company or development for the country. No? It requires a lot of humility to say, I'm just an administrator, temporary administrator. I would like to pass over to the next one, something better. Whether or not this is what I have to report and it has to be good. And so I'm not blaming them if they have so one of the things that we can create in economics, in political economy, I would say, is a way of measuring the success of CEOs and of politicians. The accountability, well, the accountability needs to have concrete measurements of success. And if the measurement of success in the national economy is still the gross domestic product, then we will be in trouble. But equally, we can say the same in companies. If the measure of success is just the increased price of the share, well, because those politicians or CEOs of companies will look at that, and I will transform it into a priestly analogy. If the measure of success of my parish is in the number of people who come to mass, it is one measure of success. I'm not saying no, but if that's the only thing, my pastoral approach will be focused on that, on increasing the numbers at any cost. And then I can say to the bishop, look, I received the parish with 100, I leave the parish with 200. How good is that? Well, then, but the same applies to politicians and the same applies to CEOs. The problem is, in the short time, if we have a short time, what are the measurements of success that can trigger, that can help us to say, no, listen, yeah, this is a process of development, a process of growth, or a process of conversion, as I said. And I will put a positive example to link it with my initial presentation, my response to Julia. How do I measure my progress of conversion in this process of conversion? How do I measure it? How do I know that it's just increasing the number, I don't know, yes, it's just the decrease of water that I use or the decrease of kilograms of meat that I eat. I don't know. It has to be a more comprehensive understanding of measurement of conversion. The same with measurement for growth, the same with measurements of development. So at the core, we need to create a measurement of success that can help these people to end up the time, no? And said, this is what I do. Well, I think it was good. I think it was a contribution, but without damaging. Because otherwise we need heroes. Otherwise we need to, so how can we offer to, not to heroes, to ordinary people, where we are all strong and weak at the same time, sinners and saints at the same time. How can we offer a model where you can deploy your mission as a politician, as a leader of a company, as a leader of a church, and say, well, this is what my contribution in a long-term process, no, and not just in these 4 years. So this is another more sophisticated way of pushing the change. And a third one would be to touch the hearts also. And this is what many people are doing, because they have, most leaders, they have also children. And the children are challenging their parents. And I know that, well, they don't want to be the billion syndrome families, no? Or so, and that's why we are human beings. You see, we are not just rational. It's not just because these will be. Well, I don't want to be the billion to the people I love. And if the people I love are saying me, listen, dad or mom, what are you doing to protect the ecosystems? Or what are we doing to
to create a healthier energy for people to develop. Well, no, look, the thing is because, no. See, that's another thing, is by contagious, by challenging, touching people's heart, it works a lot, I would say. It's one of the most powerful. Then we can touch people's heart also through our own faith. This is what you mentioned, the book of Genesis. I mean, well, listen, if you are a believer, why are we promoting a source of energy? Yes, we believe that we have to develop, but why are we producing a source of energy that is damaging what God has given us? So a new understanding of our history of creation, of redemption, that Jesus Christ, if you're a Christian, came to redeem everybody, not just people. I remember once I was talking to a parliamentarian in the UK, I won't say where, and the political party, but we were having a discussion with politicians, with Christian politicians. And I mentioned this, that Christ came to redeem everybody, the whole creation, not just human beings. And he stopped me and said, oh, I've been Catholic for 60 years. And he was a bit old. I said, I mean, it's the first time I've heard this. So you see, it's incredible. I mean, this is a committed Catholic who has been attending Mass since he was born. And it was the first time he heard that the universal mission of Christ's redemption. So it's also our fault a little bit. No? That's another way, from the faith-based perspective, how can we help the people who are based in, who have the Christian values, to put them on the table when they have to take decisions on energy. And I give you another good example of the first story of creation in the book of Genesis. So God created the earth in 6 days, and then he rested. But you see, at the center of the story, whereas the center of the second story of Adam and Eve, the center was the tree in the garden of Eden. Here, the center is when God created the sun and the moon to rule the day and the night, which are, well, the source of energy, I would say. Of course, in the two stories is God behind that. The center is God. We are not at the center. Human beings are not at the center. This is something that Marcia put it in the comments, and totally agree. No, the unhealthy anthropocentrism has been part of our fault. We are not at the center, or a misunderstanding of our faith. But energy is central. Is central. The thing is, what source of energy we can promote? And nowadays, do we want to promote the energy that comes from heaven, or the energy that comes from hell? Because Sheol, the center of the earth, was an image to say hell, or more than hell, it was the place of the dead, whereas heaven was the place of the living. So do we want to generate energy from the place of the living, that is life-giving, or do we want to still promoting energy from the places of the death and creating an energy that is a bit kind of deathly? So and it's an analogy, of course, no, it's not direct. But I think that faith can be another source of motivation for many people. And finally, prophecy. Well, if people don't want to understand rationally, if people don't want to understand scientifically, if people don't want to be touched in their hearts emotionally, if people don't want to be touched from their faith and values, well, then they should understand, because some people are protesting. And say, well, if you want to be in power, we are not going to support you if you keep supporting this source of energy that is killing us all. So if you don't understand any of the other arguments, and the only argument that you understand is power, well, we are going to create a movement that you will have to hear us. And the other is the conversion from our side. We need to start converting ourselves from what we can, because remember at the beginning I said personal habits, communitarian habits, and laws also. But we need to do everything that we can so that to limit even their interest to support this kind of energies. Many of our listeners are young people, no? You are young-ish, no? But there are lots of younger than you. But I will give you another analogy. And please, as an analogy, when I say analogy, you remember, philosophically speaking, an analogy has always more dissimilarities than similarities. No, it's just a way of talking, not a scientific. I give you this: when young people go to a pub or to a nightclub, one next to the other, or to a nightclub, a pub, a bar, one next to the other, they both have the same music, the same quality of food, if there's food, the same quality of drinks, the same lights, but one is full and the other is empty. And you're right there. Where do you go? You will go to the one that is full. And it's not rational. You just go, well, well, with money is something similar. So if we can transfer a lot of money from the energy that comes from below, from the energy that comes from above, then the people, even if they are not convinced, they will go where the money goes. And that will create a positive energy, paraphrasing also your group.
Thank you so much, Father Augusto. Thank you.
Wow, really great. Thank you, Father Augusto. Very too powerful. So our last contribution today is from Luisa. Luisa is an artist, if I'm correct. She was born in Honduras, and I think she is gonna talk a little bit about her own practice, this Studio Improviso. And so please, Luisa, tell us more about this and your activity, because I mean, the art, it's one of the best way to change our own lifestyle.
Hi, hello. Yes, as Andrea was saying, I was born in Honduras and I do have a background in architecture and fine arts. Well, first of all, it is a pleasure to share this space with Father Augusto and the rest of the discussants. And well, it's been so inspiring so far. And well, I am part of the Life and Lifestyle Village, and I would just like to share some of my experience and this way just contribute to this conversation. So I'm currently developing a creative enterprise based in the UK, which joins design and fine arts with a strict interest in sustainably sourced materials. I am concerned that what I create is not only sustainably produced, but that it also is able to communicate this message in its content and form. Part of my inspiration for this idea was Laudato Si, especially when we think of the poor and the earth crying out. I also take from my cultural background and the experiences of most developing nations on how the limitations and lack of resources pushes us into becoming more resourceful, less wasteful, more inventive, and I would say arguably more sustainable. Developing an integral business away from the predominant infinite growth-based business models in a planet which is finite is definitely a challenge. And this is a challenge for which there aren't enough precedents. If I could contribute something to ecological conversion, or for instance, the COVID-19 Commission, which Father Augusto is a part of, I would like to bring bigger attention to the study of aesthetics, especially within current commercial market, given that it has strong links to consumerist patterns of behavior and obviously even stronger effects on the planet. Our decisions are heavily influenced by the way things look. I believe that by better understanding the power of aesthetics could be an important tool to use towards ecological conversion. And I suppose that the question here would be, how ready are we to accept, for instance, that the appearance of some of the goods we acquire harm the planet? And are we willing to develop new aesthetics which are more sustainable? Because this rarely seems to be a central topic. And I guess I would just like to ask Father Augusto his opinion on this, because you, in your presentation earlier, you did touch briefly on aesthetics, but I do think that, for instance, there is a bigger power to this that, as I'm saying, it just rarely seems to be part of the central topic. And what's your opinion on this kind of being part of having a bigger part within the ecological conversion discussion?
Thank you, Luisa. Yes, of course. Then it's tricky, the aesthetics, no? Because depends on as you mentioned, the depends on where you stand. You will have your view, no? But one thing that you said that is true is that it is an essential dimension of humanity, of course, aesthetics. That is linked with something very, very deeply human. The thing is to connect that with the way we live. So to go beyond the conception of aesthetic as the beauty that I like or dislike. No? For example, why do you think somebody is beautiful, or a boy, or a girl, or a group, or a thing, or a house? So where is our notion of aesthetics connected? What is our notion of aesthetics connected to? I will give you a concrete example. Before the Paris Agreement, we were discussing in a panel at CNN, and one person asked us, there was one representative of religion, there was one representative of politics, there was the former Australian Prime Minister, and one representative of academia from Cambridge University. So they asked us, well, what about the wind farms? And because they're very ugly, no? So I would say, well, and we were discussing that at the McLaren Center. The McLaren is where the Formula One cars are produced, no? And I said, well, you know, we're here at McLaren, for these people, the nicest car, most beautiful car is the car that wins. It's not just about the design. No? Maybe for us, the most beautiful thing should be the thing that gives life. When you see a pregnant woman, it's not beautiful, or it's just the beauty of a woman related to a particular model. No? When you see a man that is caring for a baby, it's not that beautiful, or is it just the image of a man? No, boxers. So if this is with human beings, think about the things that creates energy, solar panels or wind turbines, etc. But also I would say the way we live, and this is where I want to center my question, if you allow me, Luisa. The way we live is not just the planet, global village, global Earth. We live in buildings. Well, some of them, they don't have it, so they're homeless, but we're aiming at living it in villages, in houses. Now, how are the houses conceived and designed and decorated? And this is about our notion of aesthetics as well. And one of the main issues of the problem of ecological damage, or I would say carbon footprints, is not just the commuting, it's not just the way we eat, but it's the way we construct our buildings. So we cannot say to human beings, oh no, let's stop constructing houses. So because no, we have to construct houses that are more beautiful, that are aesthetically beautiful, but aesthetically beautiful in terms of the analogy to winning for a racing team would be life-giving for us. How can we design cities that are not destructive to communities and natures? How can we design our buildings with materials that are not just recyclable, no? That materials that are not destructive, that can be used and used and used and used all over again? And how can we design buildings that are connected with our environment? An example, is it not, or a question, is it not ridiculous, Lisa, that a building, an office in Rome or in London or in Kenya, no, in Nairobi, or in Hong Kong, or in Buenos Aires, or in I don't know, whatever. It's not ridiculous that the office building are the same. It's insane, because in every single of these places that I mentioned, we have different temperatures, the sun is different, the effect of the sun, the effect of the wind, the cities are different. So why don't we start designing this, the architect, no, this is not just sustainable, but why don't we start designing the aesthetics where we live in a way that is suitable to improve our lifestyles and to improve the life of nature surrounding us. So, for example, the buildings should not absorb this. And before modern age, somehow people were doing that. Before modern age, they were designing the houses according to. But now, with all the technology that we have, we can do great things, and we are not doing them. Very, very few are doing that. And on top of that, if we don't do that, I mean, and think about the design not just of the building, the design of the neighborhood. So we design our places so badly that then we need to bring our food from far, far beyond. We live in a place far, far, far away from where we work. We create this message of commuting, people being stressed out because they have to spend all this time commuting. We don't invest in public transport. I remember one day when in a country that we were traveling in a two-line road, and they were showing me, no? It was in a country in the south. Look at all these new neighborhoods, Father, that we are doing. And the city was already collapsed. And I asked, but how are all these people? Oh, they're going to be, I don't know, 5,000 people more here. But how are these people going to commute to the center? Because the streets are already collapsed. Are you thinking, well, no, that's their problem. So you see, and that's creating a mess because it will create more air pollution, traffic, etc. The materials that we use, the food that we need to bring in. So what about if we change the entire understanding of aesthetics and relate it more to internal and life and life-giving rather than just aesthetics imposed by particular models that has nothing to do with my culture and are normally imposed by the social media. This is a very, very strong challenge. I'm not giving any solution, apologies, but I'm just increasing the challenge. And this is what Pope Francis in Laudato Si says, that we need a cultural revolution when he speaks about education. An education capable of being an education that creates critical thinking, because in the era of hyperinformation, but critical thinking even with aesthetics. Why is it beautiful to be dressed up like that? In my culture, that has nothing to do. Why is it beautiful, this house? It has nothing to do with my surroundings. Why is it beautiful, this thing? Well, actually, I don't find it beautiful. Well, why don't we, if we are more connected, going back to Vanessa, if we were more connected with nature, the notion of aesthetics will be different. So I don't want to go back to 5 centuries ago, where I don't want to be like indigenous people, because I'm not. But if I was more connected with nature, I can guarantee you that my understanding of aesthetics will be different. And this is the proposal. The same with human beings. And I learned that from Mother Teresa. I remember Mother Teresa is, for me, I had the privilege to meet her in person, and she was extraordinary. But she was tiny, 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 with hands, very big hands, and all. But she was, I mean, I would say I found her beautiful. But well, of course, she was very old, tiny, with all the disease. But she was transmitting something so beautiful, with that I couldn't but admire her. And what if we? Because why? Because she was connected with misery, with human misery, and therefore, if once you're connected with human misery, you start understanding aesthetics in a different way, and irradiating also the beauty of humanity in a different way. Well, I've been asked to stop things, but well, I'm sorry that I haven't answered your question, but I want to push. I would like that this village can treat this thing also.
Yes, thank you very much. That definitely gives us a lot of food for thought, and it definitely will help us out develop more solutions.
So thank you, Father Augusto, for so many inputs and things to think about that you gave us today. I think you really, well, gave us several inputs that we can bring into our own villages. I think that all the villages that participate today can bring something. And I think that we really should take very seriously this integral ecology approach, both to change our own lifestyles and then to contribute to change communities and laws, as you were saying. So this is I think a very urgent and important task that we have, and we hope we will be able to take it and to, well, provide a solution, contribute to the solution of these so many issues. So thanks again to all the people who participate. Thanks to the organizers, of course, and to the ones who attended this webinar on the YouTube channel and on Zoom and on all the other platforms. It was a great pleasure to spend this time with you all, and I really hope to see you again very soon. So thank you very much and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye-bye.